Most of our new equipment is high efficiency, HEPA rated, and what that means, it's high efficiency particulate air. It's the latest and the best as far as cleaning. We have some excellent new equipment. If you ever go down to high school and watch them use our Ride-On auto scrubber to do the gym floor, does an excellent job. We can do it in about 8 minutes, the whole floor, which is incredibly productive. It does a nice job. So we're always on the lookout for ways to make our employees work more efficiently, more productively. Does it mean we do a better job? Yes, we do a better job, but we could use more help. That's pretty much it.
Thank you, Wayne. And the last question is, again, a program that the school committee has talked about. It's a school committee initiative, and it deals with foreign languages. And right now, our foreign language program begins in grade 8. And I'm going to ask Pam first, and then Dick. How would our students benefit from beginning foreign language training at an earlier grade? And perhaps you can even tell us how that we compare to other school districts as far as starting foreign languages.
Sure. Let me speak, I guess, first to the state standards in terms of, I had a nice conversation yesterday with the foreign language department chair. And the issue really is maximizing competency in this case. Currently, if a student begins in grade 8, the way the state standards break down, and I'll try and make this as brief as I can, are basically 4 components or 4 stages of learning of the foreign language. The way we're structured now, at best, a student that begins language in grade 8 and continues through grade 10 would at best master perhaps the first 2 stages of learning, which is essentially identification of yourself, being able to ask for directions, basic vocabulary and phrases. Really getting into the higher order thinking skills doesn't come in until stage 3 or 4. So a student would have to continue through 10th and 11th grade to reach those stages. However, they would have a greater advantage to reach those stages and to do it with long-term impact, meaning they'd be able to carry the skill out of school and apply it in their everyday life if they had a greater time span in which to practice the language. And I would think that our goal would be, knowing that it's both an academic pursuit, but it also has a real-world application in the current job market and the global economy, that we would want our students not to just have basic functional travel language ability, but be able to take that skill out into the workplace. So that's some of the thinking behind this proposal. And I know it had come out of, there's a curriculum in place already that would span grades 3 through 12, and the thinking is to begin it in the middle school take the jump to begin it in the middle school next year and then perhaps phase the rest in later.
Thank you, Pam. And Dick, could you respond as to the benefits of starting earlier?
Well, we have a grade 8 French class, a grade 8 Spanish class, and it's our vision to start a introductory program in the 6th grade and an intermediate program in the 7th grade, and then to continue to support our full-fledged program. This also gives the kids a great opportunity to expand their world language as they move into high school, and for those kids who want to, wonderful opportunity for advanced placement and things like that.
Thank you, Dick. That concludes my questions to the panelists. At this time, I'm going to ask the audience, and I hope you do have some questions, but I'm going to ask the audience, if you have questions, you can either submit them in writing to me if you don't want to come up to the front of the room, or feel free to come up to the microphone, identify yourself, and ask a question of any one of the panelists, the superintendent, or Mr. Nelson. So let's have some volunteers. Then we're going to come to the school committee after that for questions. Anybody? Carol, why am I surprised? Come on up.
This is a major part. Just answer questions.
Just identify yourself, Carol, and then you can ask your question.
Okay, I'm Carol Dingman. I live at 7 Canterbury Lane. Can I ask more than one question?
Well, all right.
I just blew it if I don't.
Since there's nobody else in line behind you, Carol, but
Okay.
I reserve the right to cut you off, you know.
I'm not very familiar with the special ed programs, but I'm very interested in inclusion. It seems to me that we have kind of 3 sets of needs. One is perhaps unidentified, what I'm calling in-house needs, meaning students that are in school now and they have some maybe a reading needs or math needs or whatever that haven't been met. Students who have been identified as having a need but they're not met or they're insufficiently met. And those are also children that are in-house. And I could see that adding the staff could, really help in those areas. But I'm not sure if part of this goal is to perhaps bring some of the needs that are being met outside our department, outside our district. Is this designed to bring them back in?
Christine, you want to give that a shot?
That's an excellent question. What we do, we are mandated to provide services in the least restrictive environment.
Right.
And yet we need to have an array of services. There are, and always probably will be, those students who have such significant needs that they need to be educated in highly specialized schools that are outside the district. But what we are trying to do, and not so much in bringing students back, is stopping the exodus of students by providing appropriate services in our school system. It's very difficult once a child is out of the system to bring those children back. Now, we were able to achieve that this year at the preschool level by developing a new preschool program for some very significantly impaired children at the Hood School. And that has saved the district a large amount of money, in excess of $60,000. And the child is then being educated in their home community.
Why would it be difficult to bring them back? I'm just thinking, if you have, 8 kids that are outsourced because they have one particular reading program, if we, would it be more cost effective to bring someone into the middle school at that age, for those
Well,
those
it's a
children?
complicated answer. Because of federal mandates, the law states that a child, if the parent rejects their educational plan, so if we propose that that child return to the community and the parent rejects that, there's something in the law called stay put, and the child stays in that placement until you go through litigation. And often litigation is far more expensive than it is to leave the child in that placement.
Okay, and then I have one more
Yes.
question. After listening to Monday night's school committee, I have a concern. And
Why are you looking at me?
because you're so handsome, Joe. It looks as though the contingency on the batch is being eaten up by the relocation of the batch students. This leaves you at about 5% before construction documents. Will you be looking to make up any differences in the operating budget for the Batchelder schools, maybe through administrative costs?
We haven't really got to that point, but I've got to give you the honest answer. I'm just speaking for myself at this point. The answer is probably yes, and I'm just being candid with you. I think that obviously the contingency that we have for the batch project is 10%, or about $1.2 million. The other night we discussed the lease. The lease is going to cost us probably, by the time we're through, close to $300,000 when you include utilities, and then we have the busing costs, which we haven't actually figured out yet. So to answer your question, Carol, I hope it's not going to be too much, but realistically, I think there may be some additional requests for the operating budget, and that's not written in stone yet. It's to be determined.
Okay, and I have one comment to make.
But I'll say this, Carol, too. The amounts that we talked about the lease didn't far exceed what we had projected back when we were contemplating the relocation plan either.
Okay, I just wanted to have one comment
Yeah.
that's not related to this. In support of your music program, I would like to tell you an experience that I had on Saturday. I was privileged to go to the youth concert at the Boston Symphony Orchestra, and I was incredibly proud to see that one of the advisors for the youth concert program with the Boston Symphony Orchestra was Susan Fisher from North Reading, Massachusetts. So I think everyone should be very proud of that, and I think that really contributes a lot to the culture of our community.
That's great. Thank you. Thank you, Carol. Anybody else? Would you identify yourself?
Hi, Tricia Colella.
We know who you are.
Well, I'll also state that I'm also co-chair of the high school council, so some of my, and I have multiple questions also. And you can try to cut me off whenever you want.
I'll pull a plug when I'm ready.
Yeah. I guess I'd start out by, in your budget goals, restore educational services in accordance with the standards of North Reading school system, and replacing staff reduced by budget cuts. And as we all know that in the past 4 or 5 years, there have not only been cuts made to staff, which you've done a wonderful job of outlining, and also positions and programs not implemented. And I guess part of my question is, as you develop the budget, will you be looking at, what level of restoration will you be looking at? Will it be just those cut, or will you go back and look at those programs that were not implemented, and some of them have been discussed? And I guess one way to look at it is going back to the failed override in May of '02. Are we looking at that level of funding for the operating budget plus what was not implemented after that override failed? And as you go through each school's internal budget, such as at the high school is in the area of $256,000 for supplies and that assist and sustain those programs. And Mr. Bernard has shared that with the high school council, and we're going through a process of looking into that. Is that being developed, and I think I know part of the answer, but is that being developed on what was actually spent last year? Take a real hard look at what you actually spent and don't go over that, or look at what you actually need as far as, paper.
The simple answer, Trish, to that question is we are looking at what we need. We are not looking at a revenue figure and then trying to be boxed in by that figure. We're looking at what we need. We think because of what we've done the last 2 years that our needs are probably more significant now than they were in the past. As far as restoring cuts, we're not going to just restore something because it was cut. It's going to be a question of priority. So if we think there's an initiative that a program that we don't have now, or staffing we don't have now, we're certainly going to look at that, and if we feel that's more important than restoring something that we cut, then that's what we'll do. So we are really looking at our needs, and that's part of the reason we had this forum tonight, so that we could hear and the audience could hear what the needs are and have it come directly from those people who have to implement or use the budget that we give them to work with. So we're looking at, again, the theme that David had talked about, to move forward and to formulate a budget that's going to satisfy our needs. David, I don't know if you want to expand on that or not.
I do, and thanks for bringing it up, Trish, because you've certainly been part of this, when you were on the school committee, so you know exactly what some of these other programs and staff and services are all about. So again, to echo what Jerry said, and I know that hopefully it was picked up by some of the comments, we have to look at not just special education and inclusion, but we need to look at libraries and research. We need to look at technology. We need to look at foreign language. We need to look at speech, a whole array of needs, and then try to balance that with where we've been and what are we going to restore. So that's why we're talking about student competencies, because we need to look at the big picture.
Right. And I certainly hope that you've done a wonderful job in bringing up a lot of those issues, and I certainly hope that it generates a much larger discussion of what the community of North Reading really expects from education out of our schools, and what their level of acceptance may or may not be. And one of my other questions goes exactly to that, and it was just not to be particular to foreign language, but and it goes along the same lines. And in addition to early introduction in elementary schools, which we've looked at for quite a long time, especially programs that were held in the batch, do you have any plans to expand those programs at the high school? For example, offering more than, and I don't mean to say just French and Spanish, but to expand that foreign language program that students at the high school would be able to, maybe it's a Latin, maybe it's a Russian, maybe it's a German for those students that are going into the higher technology
We've had some